Hi everybody. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. We're talking about closing the polls today. My name is Kelly, and I'm the training coordinator here at the Registrar of Voters office. Please feel free to jump in anytime you have any questions or concerns about any of the processes we're going to be talking about, okay? A quick agenda of what we're going to be going through tonight is the guidelines for closing the polling place, closing the polls on your JVC, the VVPATs and packing those away for the night, disassembling the e-booths, packing our unused ballot bag, the ballot box, recording the ballot statement, the voted ballot container, repacking our supplies and the ADA equipment, and finally the collection center. All right, so some of the guidelines for closing the polling place. The first thing we want to do, of course, is announce at 8 p.m. that our polls are closed. We want to put a poll worker at the end of the line so that no new voters come in after 8 p.m. We want to remind you to not close the polls on the JVC before 8 p.m. and make sure you don't do that until after your last voter has voted. We want to make sure that if they change their mind from paper to an electronic ballot, that the JVC is still open and running. We're going to also print 2 tally tapes. We want to use one to finish the ballot statement on the front of your combined roster index. Remember that every poll worker and inspector needs to sign both tapes, and the second tape is going to go on the outside of the door of your polling place. All right, so let's talk about closing the polls on the JVC. After your last voter has voted, you're going to go ahead and press the Close Polls button on the JVC, the bottom right of the screen. Then you're going to press the arrow next to Continue to confirm that you want to close the polls. After that, we're going to enter the password to close the polls and press the arrow next to the Accept button. Of course, then we're going to print 2 tally tapes. We're going to disconnect the JVC from the AC power and the battery key. We're going to disconnect the black power cord from the JVC and disconnect the gray data cable. We want to place the JVC and both cables into the JVC J box, which is the case. And we want to ask you to be cautious when you're packing away the JVC. We want to make sure that our red in-tab blocks on the side of the JVC are not broken. So just use caution when you're putting that back into the case. And then finally, you want to remember to put the JVC chain of custody document on top of the JVC inside the case. All right, so our VVPATs that we're removing after we have closed the polls on the JVC, we want to go ahead and take out each VVPAT printer out of every e-booth, even if you've had to shut an e-booth down during the election day, maybe the printer was jammed or something happened to it. We want to make sure that if you were delivered 12 e-booths, that we have 12 VVPAT printers packed away in those blue canvas bags at the end of the night. So the first thing we want to do is make sure to remove that final blue security seal on the side of the VVPAT printer, and you're going to attach that to the back of the e-booth chain of custody document. You can see there's a big black button on the top of the VVPAT printer. You want to press and release that. This button's going to pop up, and you can turn it counterclockwise and lift the VVPAT printer out at the same time. Once you do that, you're going to see 2 black cables underneath the VVPAT printer. We want to go ahead and just disconnect those and leave those inside the open space where the VVPAT printer was sitting. And once that's done, then you can go ahead and store your VVPATs back into the blue canvas bags. We're going to ask you to put 4 of them to a bag and place them on their side. And of course, be careful, those are not padded bags, so you want to make sure that we don't want our VVPATs broken. All right, so then we're going to disassemble our e-booths and our cardboard booths. Of course, the first thing we want to do is disconnect all of our gray data cables and return them to the storage compartment inside the e-booth. Then we're going to disconnect the black power converter cables from the power strip and attach them back on the Velcro strip that's on top of the storage compartment inside the e-booth, putting all the electrical cords underneath inside the storage compartment. And basically we're going to reverse our steps. We're going to have two poll workers flip over the e-booth onto its back. You're going to take the feet off. We're going to do the opposite of how we set up. You're going to pack all the legs, everything back into the e-booth. Once you're completely finished and Velcro the legs, all the parts back together, we're going to have you stick that inside the e-booth caddy. We want you to have the legs to the left and the handle out in the front. It could take two people to put those e-booths on the top shelf of the caddy. There's actually no shelf, so be careful, but when you're up to the top layer and they're a little heavy, you might want to have somebody help you do that. Once you're finished doing that, go ahead and close the caddy door and lock that with that cable lock. And then finally, for the e-booth, you want to make sure that you put the e-booth chain of custody document back into the plastic sleeve that's attached to the outside of the caddy. Now for the cardboard booths, we're going to ask you to take those apart and then just lay them up against a wall. We actually do not pick those up. Sometimes the facilities keep them and use them for different things, but we do ask you to take them apart. All right, so when we're closing the polls for the night, before we do anything or open the ballot box, the first thing we need to do is secure the unused ballot bag and the contents that go into that. We have to make sure that these don't come in contact with any live ballots. So what we want to do is take our unused ballot bag. We're going to count and put all of the unused ballots into this plastic bag. We're going to count and put all of the spoiled paper ballots into this bag, and then also count and place the surrendered vote by mail ballots all in this bag. If you look on the outside of the unused ballot bag, there's a spot to write in the number of each item that you're putting in. And that's a good, you want to make sure you do that because we're going to use those numbers to finish the ballot statement on the combined roster index. So again, we want to count each type of ballot and record that on the unused ballot bag and then on the ballot statement. And then when we're finished putting those three items back into that bag, we're going to seal that bag. Once the bag is sealed, we want to make sure that nobody unseals that. All right, so the unused ballot bag is now secure, so we can go ahead and open the ballot box. First thing we need to do is unseal the box by breaking the white sealing tape. We're going to remove all the contents of the box. And basically what we want to do is organize it into 4 groups. We want to separate our voted paper ballots into one pile. We want a pile of provisional ballot envelopes marked with a P, so we know there's a paper provisional ballot in there. And then we want to have a stack of provisional ballot envelopes marked with an E. And then finally our vote by mail ballots that were turned in at our polling place. All 4 of those items need to be separated and counted. You want to get an official tally of each group. And we're going to use these tally numbers to complete the paper ballot count on the ballot statement. All right. All right, so now let's talk about completing the ballot statement. The first thing we want to do is complete the JVC or electronic ballot section located on the left side of the statement. We're going to use the tally tape to input these numbers, and when you're finished with that, you can place that tally tape inside the JVC main envelope. Then the paper ballot section is located on the right side of the statement, and it's asking for those tally numbers from the unused ballot bag. Once you've finished both sides of the statement, it's time to finalize the document by reconciling the total number of ballots with the total number of signatures. This portion is found on the bottom part of your statement. So we're going to ask you to follow the directions on the statement, and the one thing we want to emphasize is that we're only going to ask you to try and reconcile these numbers once. It's more important for us to get the ballots back to the ROV office after the election than to have you try and reconcile the numbers if they're not adding up. So try it once, and if not, go ahead, if they don't add up, just go ahead and pack everything and bring all the supplies and the ballots back to the collection center. All right, so repacking supplies and ADA equipment. We're going to ask that you pack all the supplies back into the same box. We're going to also ask you to set aside some white sealing tape, the map to the collection center, and the receipt for the sealed container. If you're an inspector, you should have those put to the side already. Also the county cell phone. We want to make sure that that doesn't get packed back into the supply box. The first thing you want to do is pack the red canvas bag. There's an inventory list on the front. It includes items like the combined roster index, the street index, items like that. You just follow the list and make sure that everything on the list is packed back into that red canvas bag. And then most of the signs, supplies, rulers, pens, extra materials like that, the inside signs and posters can all go at the bottom of your supply box. And then we're going to ask you to place 3 items on top of everything else. We call it our final 3. It would be the unused ballot bag, the red canvas bag, and the voted ballot container being on top. Once you have all 3 of those in there, we're going to ask you to close the supply box and tape it up for the last time with the white sealing tape. We're going to have 2 poll workers return the supplies to the collection center. And we're going to also ask you to leave all the ADA equipment behind. The ROV picks that up at a later date, so you don't need to worry about returning that to any collection center. All right, so once you're ready to go back to the collection center with the supplies, this is obviously the inspector and 1 clerk. We do not require you to be in the same car. We just ask that somebody volunteers to follow the inspector to the collection center. Once you see them pull into the driveway, then you can go ahead and leave. We just need a witness to see them go into the driveway. And make sure, we want to add that the inspector does not leave the supplies inside any of the buildings at the collection center. There's employees waiting to collect all the supply boxes, so we just want to make sure there's no mix-ups and nothing is set or placed inside the building of the collection center. All right. Does anyone have any questions yet? Are you returning?
I'm there back too.
Oh, okay. Do you have, did you participate in packing up the supplies and returning anything to the collection center last time?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I followed the person delivering the ballot.
Okay. So did you have any particular questions about the closing procedures?
I found it pretty stressful, to be perfectly honest. It was my first time, and only one of my people I was working with had ever done it before. We did finally have a roving, I don't know what she was called.
Your coordinator?
Right, and she helped us close, but I have to admit, being the first time in the primary was a little more complicated, because we had so many different ballots and everything.
Right. Well, I'm really
stressed out at the end, but
right. And I'm really glad you said that, because I want to make sure that you are not stressed out by it. Obviously, this is not a primary, so that will make you know, the ballot summary a lot easier. But also, you need to remember, too, that you have a lot of resources for closing the polls that I think a lot of people don't utilize enough. We've got the, you know, the quick setup guide in the morning, the poster that tells you, if you flip that over, there's the quick takedown guide. So what I recommend is that you have a couple people, if you follow it across, it's divided up into jobs. So you can have a couple people working on taking down the booths, packing up all the equipment, a couple people, or maybe one person taking down all the signs and posters and things like that, and then another person or two working on packing the unused ballot bag, the red canvas bag, all the paperwork. And that way, number one, you aren't there forever, that you get out, and that it's not stressful. If you just follow that, also it's in your manual. There's a whole closing the poll section in your manual that will walk you right through the process too.
One of my big mistakes last time was we had so much time. You know, we would, as I'm sure you know if you've worked in elections, you have 5 people come in at once and then nothing for 30 minutes, and then 6 people come in and nothing for 30 minutes. So we should have been planning for the end, and we didn't do that. You know, we decided like 5 minutes before what everybody was going to do instead of, and that was my mistake being the first timer, but
well, that's okay though.
Much better this time.
Right, and that's how you learn too when you're when it's been a long day and you're ready to go home. So, but that's a really good point too. You just want to make sure that you're not doing anything. As long as you still have voters online, obviously, you can't start the closing polls procedures. Right. But
there were a lot of things we started gathering, you know, like you know, the instruction books and you know, the things that you just referenced material and everything. We started basically collecting all that stuff, you know, toward the end.
Right. And I would just really recommend, I mean, that's a really good idea, and I would say that that's definitely a discussion that's worth having. You know, maybe you can take down the equipment, especially if you have students, you know, ask them to, once the polls are closed on the JVC and everything's done, to start taking the booths down and stuff like that, and assign everybody. Are you an inspector or a clerk?
I'm an inspector.
Okay, so then...
And I was an inspector my first time working, which I was very intimidated by that. I will have to say I was, you know what I mean? It was, because I know it's a lot of responsibility, and I you know, so wanted not to screw anything up.
Right. Well, I understand. We appreciate that you take it so seriously, too.
Let me ask you one thing, sort of officially.
Okay.
Our coordinator, this was not mentioned to us, or if it was mentioned in any training, evidently I didn't soak it in. But and of course she didn't mention this until we were closing, but to keep track of the paper ballot, you know, like to keep a little list and just do a hash mark when the paper ballot person gives out a paper ballot, so that, you know what I'm saying, it's much easier to count it at the end if you have marked down how many you've given out, than, you know what I mean, you only have to go through it once, yep, that matches, and you're good.
Right, absolutely.
Is that official, or is that sort of...
No, you absolutely can do that, and we actually recommend that you don't open the paper ballot package and
to give out one. We did that. We followed that. We had 2 packages. We only opened 1. So
okay, good.
We did. Yeah, we did that.
Right.
That
no,
we did.
But that's absolutely okay to go.
It was so hard to count at the end because the primary, the independent, nonpartisan independent had 1 sheet and everything else had 2. So to go through there and quickly try to count, because they were so mixed up, I thought it was impossible.
Yeah, you know what? You made it through the primary. This one's going to be a breeze for you because there are so many less ballots. Is there anything that we can do to make it a little easier for you in closing the polls? I mean, we try to have a lot of resources for you. Is there anything that you can think of that would make it easier that we would be able to do to help you?
I tell you, my group last time we had. Well, I'm 62, and we had another older woman, and I think another woman in 50s, and then we had 2 kids. It was a lot of, to me, it was very physical.
Right.
I have some neck problems, and I was just like absolutely dead by the end of the night, you know, from sitting on a wooden chair. And so, I mean, I've already decided I'll take a chair pad, but boy, I cannot imagine how, like where I used to vote, were like three little old ladies. I do not know how do they do all that physical lifting and all that.
Right.
No.
Well, number one, the students are great for that. So utilize your students. I mean, they're clerks, just like all your other clerks. So, you know, take advantage of their youth and get them to help you. And,
But you know, you almost have to make it, you know what I mean? They don't volunteer to do anything, and I don't know. It just was, my two girls I had were very good, you know, they were very nice, very sweet, and they did anything we asked them to, but they never did anything on their own, you know what I mean?
right.
But they never once said, let me do that.
Right. Well, you know, as the inspector, you have every right to ask them to do that. You know, I understand everyone's volunteering, but that's part of your responsibility is to ask them. You know, they're timid too, and more than likely it was their first election, and they're nervous, and they don't.
That it definitely was.
Yeah, and they don't want to make mistakes either. So with your guidance, you know, absolutely.
I'll know, believe me, I'll know much better the second.
Yeah.
I was just nervous the first time.
I'd like to add that, you know, sometimes when people are there, you know, they may not necessarily know what they're supposed to do, so it doesn't hurt to go up to them and say, okay, I'd like you to do this, or I'd like you to do that, because sometimes people don't always know unless somebody tells them.
Right. And especially some of the students, because they are, you know, young, and it's their first, most of them, it's their first election. So, yeah, definitely don't feel bad about asking them to do things or giving them direction on what you need them to be doing. Yeah, I mean, and they're great workers, and especially with all the equipment.
My two girls were very, very good, and I think they did just a superb job, the two students.
That's good.
You know what I mean? Everything seemed to go very, very, nothing ever was, you know, nothing went wrong, so.
Right. Well, that's great. And trust me, you're going to be so relaxed this time because you've been through it, and the primary is a tough one to start with because there are so many ballots.
It was insane. It was insane.
And you survived.
And I survived.
And you made it look good. Okay. Okay, the one thing I do want to remind you, too, that with this election, there are going to be multiple pages for the ballots, too.
Yes,
so,
all the propositions, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know. So, yeah, just make sure that you're careful. And, you know, also when talking about heavy lifting and stuff like that, if you aren't able to get the students or anybody that's able to lift, we do offer help on early setup. We have a team that we send out on Monday before the election to help with early setup.
Okay.
So that is available to you, too. You just want to make sure and call the customer service number and put your name on the list.
Okay.
And that way we'll be able to come out and help you.
Now, when I got my pass and when I look online, there's nobody signed up to work with me. Is that, I mean, we will have enough people, right?
Right. They're still adding, and a lot of times they don't add them to your board until they've gone through training.
Okay.
So, yeah, you just want to keep checking with your poll worker pass. And also remember to call your poll site, too, and verify that we can go in to do early setup or that you can do early setup. Make sure. Do you know where your polling site is?
Yes, it's where the primary was. It's the Horace Mann School, and they were really super last time. And actually there were two custodians there who actually helped. You know, they pulled the rack out, and you know they didn't help us with the machinery, but they helped us get it out of the closet. And
oh, that's
I mean, they were.
That's in Anaheim, right?
Anaheim, right?
Right. Okay.
Oklahoma.
Right. I know exactly where that's at. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, check with them, make sure it's okay, and if you think you're going to need any help at all, you know, call us sooner than later so we can get you on the list and get that scheduled.
Will do.
Yeah, so that's another resource we offer. Is there anything else that you think we could do to help?
No. I've signed up for all the webinars that apply to me, and of course I'll go to the training. So you know, it never hurts to be, I used to be a teacher, so it never hurts to reinforce things. So.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you listening to this, and hopefully we're helping you a little bit. Do you have any other questions, either one of you, or anybody out there?
I'm good.
All right. Anybody have any other questions about closing the poll?
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. You know, the polling site was inside the school. You know, you had to go through a gate inside the school upstairs in the library.
Okay.
Should that polling place be right outside that door, or should it be like outside the gate?
No, it just needs to be outside the door.
Okay, just
Right. Just outside the door of whatever room you're in.
okay.
Boy, they
Once they closed the gate after we left, I don't think anybody could have gotten in to look at it. But
okay.
you know, that was one of the things I thought that's kind of.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you a quick question. Is that inside a building, or is it outside? Like, could the public see that tally tape, or is it?
Not once the gate was closed. I don't think you can get into the campus. You know, it's the library is on the inside, not the outside of the building.
Right.
It's inside, and there's a gate that I assume they lock after we left.
Okay. Well, it does need to be outside. I was trying to figure out if it was like inside a hallway, or, you know what I mean, where the average or general public wouldn't be able to see it.
General public would not be able to get in there once that gate to the inside of the school was
Yeah. I think you'll be.
not in it. Well, of course, obviously it was in the building, but there's a giant, you know, open space. The school is kind of goes around an open space,
Oh, okay.
and so. But you do have to go through this one corridor, which does have a gate, which was locked in the morning and would be locked after we left. You know, obviously to keep access to the school at night, or to limit access to the school at night. Well, you know, the coordinator who was there put it on the outside of the door, so I'm assuming she knew what she was doing, but it just struck me as odd that nobody would be able to
Right.
get it. So.
And really, you know, it would be fine putting it outside of the gate too, either one. But I mean, it's meant for observers and poll monitors, people like that, to be able to have access to it. So I think you'd be fine though leaving it outside the door.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
That's it for me at this point.
How do you feel about it?
Better. I'm much less nervous than I was the first time.
Good. Yeah, I think you'll be fine.
You know, anytime you do something the first time, particularly something that's serious as an election, you know, I just found it intimidating, but
Right.
much less now.
Well, thank you for volunteering again, because we need people who take it seriously, and we appreciate your service.
I think it's the keystone of our democracy. You know, a lot of people think the gun in your pocket is what protects you, but I think the ballot is what protects you.
Right, there you go. I agree. Well, I think you're definitely going to be a lot more comfortable this time.
Yeah.
And then just remember that we do have a lot of resources, okay? So
Okay,
if
you are the most organized organization I've ever dealt with. I am not kidding you. It was mind-boggling to me how organized everything was.
well, thank you.
I felt a weak link in the cave.
Oh, no, I'm sure you were fine. That's great, though. But just remember to make sure you take your manual with you.
Right.
You know, when you're opening and closing the polls, use that poster, the quick setup guide and everything. Have that with you. You know, there's the procedural cards for each position.
Right. And we did use that last time. You know, when we did check our manual several times. We looked at lists. So I think we did a pretty good job.
That's good. I'm sure you did. And you noticed in the very back of the manual, there's a what to do if guide also.
Yeah.
For questions that might come up during the day with the equipment or different scenarios. So check that out too. It's in the very back of the manual.
Well, I will say, knock wood, we did not have one problem with any machine, or, I mean, you know what I mean? Have any problems you would expect to have, we did not.
Well, good. It sounds like you ran the polling place perfectly. I don't know why you were so nervous. I
And,
just,
you know, the interesting things that we had, like we had a blind lady, and, you know, so it was an interesting experience for me.
good. That's good. I know I worked on polling places too. I did not work as an inspector, but just as a clerk, and it is very interesting, and it's a great experience. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. I thoroughly did. It physically was pretty demanding, but I really did it.
Right. Well, make sure you use your students and call us and get on the list if you have, you know, any inkling that you might need some help setting up
All right.
the day before,
Will do.
so that we can come out and help you with that.
I'll wait till I get some people on my board so I can, you know, see what I'm working with.
Right. Right. Yeah. Of course, check with them first. But if you're,
Right.
you know, not 100% sure, then just give us a call. It's better to have you on our list and have you call and say we've got it than to miss out on that. So, right.
Okay.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? No, everyone's comfortable? Well, I really appreciate you attending our webinar, and just remember that everything is in your manual and on our quick setup and takedown guide. If you have any questions, our customer service number is 714-954-1901, and they'll be able to help you with any questions you have, even on election day. So just give us a call, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
good night.
All right.